Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about a nutrient that's, well, it's just not like the others. It's a vitamin that totally breaks the rules, one your own body can actually cook up with just a little help from the sun.
So let's just kick things off with a question. What if your body could actually make its own vitamin? I mean, think about that for a second. That one thing, that unique ability, is what makes vitamin D so different from, well, all the others.
All right, here's the game plan for today. We're going to start with why it's called the sunshine vitamin. Then we'll look at the two different ways it gets into our system. We're calling that two paths to power. We'll follow its activation journey and see how it becomes what I like to call a calcium commander. Then, of course, we have to look at what happens when the vitamin vanishes, and we'll wrap it all up with how you can find your balance.
Okay, first things first, why do we even call it the sunshine vitamin? Well, the reason is super simple, but honestly, pretty remarkable. It's because it is the only vitamin your body can literally make all by itself.
So, what is this stuff exactly? Vitamin D isn't just one single thing. Nope, it's a whole family of compounds, specifically fat-soluble ones called sequesteroids. And the crazy part? This whole incredible story kicks off right there, under your own skin. So it all begins with this precursor molecule. Get ready for it. 7-dehydrocholesterol. Now, what's so cool about this is that it's actually a step in your body's own cholesterol-making process. So you've basically got this raw material just hanging out in your skin, waiting for the sun to come along and work its magic. But, sunlight isn't the only game in town. It's not the only way this vitamin starts its journey. So let's get into our next section and explore these two paths to power, the two ways vitamin D shows up. All right, so there are two main forms of this vitamin, D2 and D3. On one hand, you've got vitamin D3, also known as cholecalciferol. This is the one your skin makes from sunlight, and you can also get it from animal sources. Then, on the other hand, there's vitamin D2, or ergocalciferol, and that one comes from plants, like mushrooms. So besides just soaking up the sun, you can actually eat your vitamin D. I mean, some foods are just naturally packed with it, right? Think fatty fish like salmon or mackerel, or, the classic cod liver oil if you're brave. And then a ton of other foods like dairy products and cereals have it added in. That's called being fortified. Even good old whole eggs have a nice little bit. This is all super important, especially if you live somewhere that doesn't get a ton of sun. Okay, so we've got the raw material, right? It's either from the sun or from our food. But here's the catch. It can't do anything yet. It's just sitting there. So let's move on to the next part of the story, the activation journey. This is where our little provitamin gets its superpowers.
Yeah, in its first form, vitamin D is totally inert. It's basically useless. I love this analogy. It's like having a blank key that hasn't been cut to fit the lock yet. Before it can do any of its really important jobs in your body, it has to get activated. And this activation, it's a critical two-step process. So first stop, no matter where it came from, skin or food, is the liver. In the liver, it gets its first little chemical tweak, becoming something called 25-hydroxycholecalciferol. Then it's off to the kidneys for the final step. And there, bam, it becomes the fully active form, 1,25-dihydroxycholecalciferol. Now our hero is finally ready for action.
So now that it's activated, what's its big mission? What's its main job? Well, this is where we meet vitamin D as a calcium commander.
And this quote, it really nails it. The main role of vitamin D in our body is maintaining calcium homeostasis. Or, to put it simply, it's the boss. It's the master regulator of all the calcium floating around in your bloodstream.
So how does it do that? How does it command the calcium? Well, it's got this awesome three-part strategy. First, it cranks up calcium absorption in your gut, so you pull more of it out of your food. Second, it tells your kidneys, hey, hold on to that calcium, don't let it escape in the urine. And third, if things get really serious, it can actually pull calcium right out of your bones and put it into the blood.
Okay, so why is all this such a big deal? Why do we care so much about calcium levels? Well, keeping that balance is absolutely crucial for two huge things. One, strong bones. That's called bone mineralization, the whole process of building up your skeleton. And two, proper nerve function. You need it so your brain and your body can talk to each other.
But wait, there's more. Our little vitamin hero is a total multitasker. It's not just about calcium. It's also super important for your immune system, helping your immune cells grow up right. It also helps regulate the parathyroid gland, which is another big player in the calcium game. And it's even involved with these cells called osteoclasts, the ones that remodel our bones. I mean, seriously, what can't it do?
All right, so we've established that this vitamin is a pretty big deal. But what happens when it's not there? What happens when the vitamin vanishes? What are the consequences when our main character just goes missing?
Well, a deficiency can happen for a few key reasons. The most obvious are just lifestyle things, not getting enough sun, which is a real problem for people in northern climates, or just not eating enough foods with vitamin D. But it can also be a deeper physiological issue. Remember those activation sites, the liver and the kidneys? If they're damaged, your body just can't make the active form of the vitamin no matter how much you get.
And when that deficiency happens, it leads to two pretty nasty conditions, depending on your age. For kids, it causes something called rickets. Their bones get soft and painful, they can actually bend, and it really messes with their growth. For adults, it's a different name, osteomalacia. In this case, bones get all porous and brittle, so they fracture really easily, and you often get muscle weakness along with it.
Okay, so we definitely know why it's so important, and we know the risks of not having enough. So now let's talk about finding your balance. How do you get the right amount?
So the official recommendation, the RDA, actually changes as you get older. Little babies under 1 year old, they need about 400 international units a day. For most of us, from age 1 to 70, that number bumps up to 600. And then, for folks over 70, it goes up again to 800, because they just need that extra bit to keep their bones strong.
But listen, this is a classic case of too much of a good thing. You really have to be careful here, because taking way too much vitamin D, and this is almost always from going overboard on supplements, can lead to a condition called hypervitaminosis D.
So, how much is too much? Well, the upper limit for a healthy adult is set at over 250 micrograms a day. If you're consistently getting that much, you can end up with way too much calcium in your blood, and that brings on a whole bunch of its own problems, like fatigue and even stomach pain.
It all just goes to show what a delicate balance our bodies are constantly trying to maintain. So let's just end with this final thought. Now that you know its incredible journey, starting with sunlight and food, making pit stops in your liver and kidneys, and finally becoming the commander of your body's calcium, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are you getting enough of the sunshine vitamin?